Hello and welcome back to my kitchen. It's been quite some time since we've been in the kitchen together. Today we are going to be doing a hot salsa recipe, and this is from the Ball website, and I will link the recipe in the description. If you would like any other recipes that I have out here today, I'm making some bread and I also have some sauerkraut fermenting. I can happily link that in the description as well. Just comment that you would like that recipe. And this is from our garden fresh tomatoes and jalapenos, and I am so proud to be able to put those up on the shelf. And we have so many more coming in, so I might have to do another round of this because this came out so good. And I also would like to do a few other recipes with them as well, so stay tuned. Just pulled some fresh bread out of the oven 10 minutes ago, so they're just cooling off. I'm going to take those out of the pan. I melted some butter on top of them and just rubbed a stick of butter on top. I also have a ferment going of sauerkraut from our cabbage from the garden. And this should be done. I'm going to give that a taste tester. I just tried a piece that broke off of this one and it is so good. And these are so soft. This is definitely the softest bread recipe I've ever done. I didn't do a video on this, but if you would like the recipe for this, I can put it in the description. Just let me know in the comments. I always rewash my jars before using. Today I'm using half pints. These are 8-ounce jars. And we're going to be water bath canning today. I am using my digital pressure canner, which is also water bath canner too. And I will use it on the boiling water can mode. You can use just a regular water bath canner. Always starting with washing your veggies. I'm washing these in cold water and vinegar, and I give them a good scrub and wash them off. I have forgotten to take out my tomatoes to thaw them the night before, so I am thawing them in some cold water on my countertop. They're not fully thawed, but they're good enough to get the skins off. Now I want to prep my veggies, starting with the green onions. I'm going to cut off the tips and the ends, and then give them a good chop. And I will do this for all 6 of my green onions. I have my jars warming in the canner as I'm prepping these veggies. Next, we're going to give our cilantro a good mince, so I'm just pinching this all together, and I'm going to mince this up as finely as I can. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of cilantro, so I'm using about that. I'm not a big fan of cilantro, so I would opt out of this if I was making it just for myself, but I'm making this for my husband as well, and he likes cilantro. I would probably sub in parsley instead of this. I'm one of those people that cilantro tastes like soap, and I'm not a fan of the smell either. But I also feel like it wouldn't taste like a proper salsa without it. We need 4 cloves of garlic, and we are mincing this as well. These are pretty big cloves, so this should give it some good flavor. Now that that is minced as good as I can get it, I'm going to add that to the pot as well. Now here the recipe calls for 2 jalapenos. My jalapenos are from the garden. They're a little bit small, so I'm using 4 so it can equal 2 that you would get at the grocery store. And these are to be chopped. So I'm just cutting it in 4s and then piecing it back together and slicing them. It's easier if you can kind of like keep it all intact, but I was trying to show you guys and it kind of fell apart. If you wanted a little less spicy, you could take out some of the seeds. I want to keep all the spice in, so I'm going to leave all the seeds in. Be sure to wear gloves while handling and slicing your jalapenos so you don't burn yourself if you accidentally touch your face right after. I heard it stings pretty bad, so I always wear gloves. This recipe calls for 5 pounds of tomatoes. I was debating on doubling it, but I want to make sure that I like this recipe before I go all in with it. You want to make sure you take off the peels so it is canning safe, and we are going to dice these. It also calls to be seeded, but I'm not too worried about the seeds in there. I'm just getting out as much as I can. But honestly, I can't even tell that they're in there with the texture. I do make sure that the skins are off though to make sure it's canning safe. I'm just adding that to my pot as I go as well. Now that we have all our veggies in the pot, we are going to add our other ingredients, starting with a 1/2 cup of white vinegar. This has to be 5% acidity. 2 tablespoons of lime juice. 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm using a sea salt. 4 drops of hot pepper sauce. I'm using a Tabasco sriracha sauce. Now we're going to bring this over to the stove. We're going to simmer this for 15 minutes. I'm going to give all the ingredients a little mix, stirring to combine. Now this looks a little liquidy, but it will thicken up as it cooks a little bit. I'm just loving all the colors here. It looks so vibrant and beautiful. It is now at a simmer, so we're going to let this go for 15 minutes. You can see it's starting to thicken up here. It has now been 15 minutes, so it's all ready to jar up. I apologize for all the baby sound effects. Now I'm going to ladle this into my 8-ounce jars, leaving 1/2 inch of headspace. This is a ball recipe. I will link the recipe in the description. And this recipe was so good, I'm definitely going to make this one from now on. It is a little spicy, if you like that. Might be the extra few drops of sriracha I added. But overall, it is delicious, and I do like the extra little spice. We ended up cracking open a jar later this night. It did seal, but we didn't wait the full 24 hours. It just smelled so good, and we wanted to try it. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little tedious to do with peeling all the tomatoes and stuff, but it was definitely so worth it. I only ended up with 5 jars of this, and we already ate one, so we got 4 jars left, and I'm definitely gonna have to make this again. Now I wish I doubled the recipe, but I just wanted to make sure it was a good recipe before I wasted all my tomatoes and all my time on it. This really has me looking forward to all the other things we're going to be able to make with our garden tomatoes. So far, I think we harvested about 15 pounds of tomatoes, a little bit more. I used 5 for this, so I should have a little more than 10 left. Plus many, many more coming in still. We got all our jars filled to 1/2 inch headspace. This recipe got us perfectly to 5 jars, like to the last drop. Now I'm gonna check the headspace with my headspace tool / debubbler. Every jar was 1/2 inch. So now I'm gonna go through and debubble. I did already do this to all my jars, but my camera cut off, so I'm just showing you again what I did. You go around the edge with your debubbler, and then recheck your headspace to 1/2 inch. Now I'm gonna take my paper towel that I have in my hand right now, and I have white vinegar on this. I'm just going over the top. We're going to check for any nicks in the glass as we go, and this will take off any of the salsa that I spilled to make sure we get a good seal. It is very essential to do this step because you do not want to risk not getting a good seal. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my lids on. After all my lids are on, I'm going to put on my rings. You want these to be fingertip tight, so you're not going to squeeze on these and try to crank them on hard or they will buckle. You don't want your lids to buckle. You don't want it to be too loose either where they just fall off in the canner. So fingertip tight, as you can see here, is a good rule to follow by. All my lids and bands are on, so I'm going to put them in my water bath canner. I'm going to lock the lid. I have my canner set for 25 minutes for my elevation. The recipe calls for 20 minutes, and then you just add time for your elevation. Our salsa is all done now, and I have labeled them with hot salsa and the date. I also washed the jars for storing and took off the rings to check the seal. You should be able to pick up your jar like this. If it drops down, then the seal is not good. You don't want to keep that. You'll want to put it in your fridge and then eat it within the next few days if it doesn't seal. Okay. So I washed these jars down with some soapy water and vinegar. This will take off all the water spots and make sure there's nothing around the jars that can make the product inside go bad. And then they are shelf stable and good for a year. I hope you like this recipe and stay tuned for more. Have a blessed day.